Good afternoon, everyone. I will call to order. Are we, well, before we do this, are we ready, staff? Is everyone
We're ready. We're ready to do a roll call. Sure thing. Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to call to order the Regional Planning Governing Board meeting for Thursday, April 8th. The hour is 2 o'clock. We will start with a roll call.
All right. Vaughn Hartung.
Here.
Naomi Dewar. Absent. Jenny Breckus.
Here.
Jean Herman.
Here.
Ed Lawson.
Here.
Donald Abbott.
Here.
Alexis Hill.
Here.
Diane Vanderwell.
Here.
Devin Reese. Absent. Bonnie Weber.
Here.
And non-voting member Kurt Thigpen.
Here. It appears we have a quorum at this time. I'd like, Mr. Chair, if I may, to read in a short announcement with regard to the Zoom meeting format.
Go right ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Due to the social distancing requirements enacted in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Regional Planning Governing Board meetings will be hosted in this virtual setting until further notice. The safety of regional residents, employees, and elected officials are important to us, and we appreciate your patience as we journey through this virtual meeting together. Regional Planning uses Zoom, a third-party app, for its virtual meetings and does not control its technical specifications or requirements. Your ability to participate in public comment during this meeting may be impacted by factors like the type of device you use, the strength of your internet or cell signal, and the company that provides your internet or cellular service. TMRPA is not responsible if you are not able to participate in a meeting through Zoom due to these or any other factors. Public comment items. For those watching and listening from home, there are 2 opportunities to give general public comment towards the beginning and end of the meeting, and you can also opt to give public comment on a specific item. In order to participate in public comment, you must access the tmrpa.org homepage and click on the digital public comment card button. There you can choose the item you wish to speak on. Once submitted, you'll be given instructions on how to join the Zoom meeting in progress and instructions for how public comment will be administered. When you are called on to speak for public comment, state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name and you will have 3 minutes. Please remember, any comments or questions cannot be addressed or answered by the board if the topics have not been agendized. Any person who disrupts the meeting to the extent that it is disorderly conduct will be removed from the meeting. Thank you again for joining us, and the meeting will now begin.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smith. I appreciate it. Let's move on to salute to the flag. Would our special guest, former Commissioner Marsha Burke Bigler, would you lead us in the salute?
I would be happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me just get rid of my background here. I appreciate staff putting up the proper background. That was delightful. And there we go. Okay. Approval of the agenda, item number 3. Are there any emendations or changes to the agenda at this time? Okay.
Move to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, so I have a motion by Ms. Hill, second by Ms. Breckus. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to those minutes or any emendations? Okay.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Lawson, second by Ms. Weber. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item number 5, public comment. I don't know who's running this for us.
Damian Kerwin's our clerk today.
Damian.
Yes, there is no public comment for this item.
Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak that in the participants room? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and we will move on to item number 6, business of the day. Mr. Smith, will you read that for us? And then I will read it into the record.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. Business of the day, item 6A, Rpgb Resolution 21-01, Resolution of Appreciation for the service of Marsha Burke Bigler as a member of the Rpgb. Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. So, and I'm going to call you Commissioner Burke Bigler because that's still an appropriate title. It is my honor to read this. Whereas Marsha Burke Bigler, as a representative of Washoe County, has been a member of the Regional Planning Governing Board since January 2013. And whereas Marsha Burke Bigler served as the chair of the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Governing Board from August 2018 to August 2019, providing steady leadership to the board, the Regional Planning Commission, and the Truckee Meadows Planning Agency. And whereas during Marsha Burke Bigler's tenure as chair, the Rpgb took action on many issues of great importance to the Truckee Meadows, including the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan Update. And whereas Marsha Burke Bigler, whether the meetings were in person or virtual, always positively greeted her colleagues and TMRPA staff with kindness and warmth. And whereas Marsha Burke Bigler frequently provided valuable insight and perspective for the Rpgb members regarding the Washoe County Commission and various boards she served on. And whereas Marsha Burke Bigler provided thoughtful discussion while always dressed for success. Couldn't agree more. And whereas Marsha brought her trusted canine companion to all Zoom meetings to brighten up our day. Thank you. And whereas Marsha Burke Bigler consistently and effectively exercised her responsibilities as a member of the Regional Planning Governing Board calmly, fairly, and efficiently, with strong leadership, clear direction, respect for staff, and a commitment to the benefits of regional planning. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Regional Planning Governing Board does hereby extend its sincere appreciation to Marsha Burke Bigler for serving as a member of the Regional Planning Governing Board for her countless hours of public service on behalf of the citizens of the Truckee Meadows. Adopted this day, April 8th, 2021, by an affirmative vote of the Regional Planning Governing Board. So let me first start, Ms. Burke Bigler, by congratulating you.
Thank you.
Well done. And say that with respect to the Regional Governing Board, I appreciate the great leadership that you provided to get the regional plan update done. You kept us on track. It was not an easy task, and I want to thank you for daring to endeavor that. So
thanks, Commissioner Hartung. I appreciate it. It was great working, and everybody just did such a great job on that plan. So it was really fun getting it together and getting everybody finally, and not having litigation. Wasn't that nice? I don't know. Norm might have not thought that was nice, but I think the rest of us did.
No, it was, again, great work, great leadership. We appreciate you being there. Anybody else? Feel free.
Yeah, Marsha, thank you. I've been on this board now for 10 years, and it was fun to have you on there and have your insight. So thank you. And I can see by that big smile on your face, you are definitely enjoying that retirement.
I am so loving it. I have to tell you. I do miss you guys, though.
Well, you can always be on Zoom with us.
Gee, thanks.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah, and I enjoyed working with Marsha on issues related to our common representation of some of the neighborhoods, particularly her own. We had some nice issues that came up over there, and I know she'll let me know if there's any other neighborhood issues up there, but it's a great place to be spending time, and I hope you're really enjoying it. So thank you.
I am, and thank you, Jenny. I appreciate all that you do for this neighborhood. You are really super at constituent relations, and you're well respected and liked in this district. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Feel free to chime in. Oh,
Jean?
I see your hand up. Go ahead, Ms. Herman.
Okay, yes, Marsha, we miss you a lot. It's just, you always brightened up the days. Big smile on your face and handing out bottles of water. It was great. We really miss you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. I miss you a lot too. We should have lunch sometime soon. We did promise to do that, so let's plan it.
All right.
I miss you a lot.
All right.
Okay. Anybody else? Is that you? Are you waving your hand, Bonnie?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Floor's yours.
Thank you. Marsha, I've loved working with you, even when I was on the county commission, as well as at this level at city council. And so I just appreciate you so much. I know that retirement is a real blessing right now. So I thank you for all the work that you've done, the hard work, and look forward to visiting with you on other occasions for our Wine and Wine Thursdays.
Good. Thanks, Bonnie.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure working with you too. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else feel free to chime in? If not, going once, going twice. Okay. Marsha, thank you again. Thank you so much. I'm going to be a little snide and say, thanks for taking time out of your busy day, but I got to tell you, I'm jealous of that part of it.
Yes, I suspect it's amazing how, I've retired before, 3 times before, as a matter of fact, and I never really liked it. I love it. It must be time, because I finally reached that point where the yard and the dogs are far more important and much more fun than Zoom meetings. Thank you all very much. Jeremy, great job. Great fun working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marsha.
I know Donald and Kurt, I didn't get a chance to work with you, but I know you're going to be fabulous on the school board, and just all of you. Thank you very, very much for the good times and the opportunity to call you all my friends. So take care, and I'll see you again. Come and join me at the pool this summer. Jessica, see you, darling. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Marsha.
You bet.
Thanks, Marsha.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Okay. And Jeremy, will we get that document to her, or did she already get it?
We'll get one to her. Yep, printed on some nice paper. We need to do all 3 of the ones from this year, so that's on the list of things to do.
Okay. Do we need to give you some authorization to frame that for her? Because I think that's appropriate.
I'm happy to. Yeah, we can happily frame them. No problem.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. That takes us to item 6B, discussion and possible direction to staff on proposed legislation and legislative items for the 2021 legislative session. That can be found on page 9 of your agenda. There's Tom. I see you, Tom. Welcome.
Hey.
Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can see you too. My name is Tom Clark. For the record, I am your contract lobbyist here in Carson City. I have to say it's been a pleasure and an honor to represent the organization. I am pleased to say, though, that there hasn't been a lot of activity, which we kind of expected. The document that you have that was distributed lists 9 bills. Of those 9 bills, 2 were on the list of potential interim committees that will study issues going on between the 2, between this session and the next legislative session. And we are in the middle of deadline week. And I know many of you have your own respective contract lobbyists with the municipalities or with the county that you may hear from, but we are just about, well, we're on the eve of the biggest deadline that we've had this legislative session, and that is bills that are introduced have to be out of their committee of origin by midnight tomorrow night. And so we are all a little bit scatterbrained right now with the bills that have been heard and seeing if they're going to get work session. One bill that we're going to talk about today is Assembly Bill 343, and you'll see that it's in a conceptual form. That's pretty common right now for us to have not an actual mock-up of the bill, but just the amendments in concept. 343 was passed out of committee in work session, amended to pass with the amendment that's before you. And it addresses walking audits of urbanized areas. And I want to give Assemblywoman Thomas, who brought the bill forward, credit, because prior to really working it out, she brought all the stakeholders together. So we joined a meeting, Jeremy and I did, with the district boards of health in Clark and Washoe, with the RTCs in Clark and Washoe, and worked out the amendment that's before you. Now, the amendment also, there's two different forms of it. And so we have the original conceptual amendment that was discussed and that Ms. Thomas brought forward. And then we have the conceptual amendment that was drafted by the Legislative Counsel Bureau. There is conflict between those two documents. I reached out to Patrick Ashton, who's the LCB policy analyst for this committee, to discuss those. He's extraordinarily busy right now with all of the other pieces of legislation. He asked if he could talk to me on Monday, and he would explain the differences between those two conceptual amendments that we have. I am more than willing and able to discuss some of the other bills that are on the list. I will tell you, though, that the most important piece of information that is on that list is the third column, which shows that the bill has been heard. And if there's nothing in the fourth column and there's no future meeting, that bill, if it doesn't say in that third column amend and do pass, and it only says that it was heard, that bill probably is not going to survive the deadline tomorrow at midnight. So we haven't focused a lot of our attention on those pieces of legislation that we don't think are actually going to move forward. And you may look at it and say, well, this doesn't have anything to do with this, but the chapters that they deal with do. So we just keep an eye on them. We participate in the hearings to ensure that if amendments do come up that affect the TMRPA, we are prepared for that to occur. And I have to tell you, Mr. Chairman, your staff has been phenomenal. Mr. Smith, Ms. Prunty, whenever I send them a text or shoot them a bill and they're on it, they give me their opinion, and we either keep it on the list or we don't. I'm going to circle back to Assembly Bill 343 and ask Mr. Smith if there's anything specific in the conceptual amendment in the relationship. I can tell you that we had a follow-up phone conversation, Zoom conversation with the RTC of Washoe yesterday. And the reason that we did that is just to kind of talk through these conceptual amendments. You'll see that the RTC is not mentioned. It only says the county. That's one of the conflicts that I want to see addressed. But really what this does is it takes the detail out of the legislation and really gives local control to the TMRPA, to the county, to decide who will actually perform the duties of these walking audits. There actually isn't a definition of walking audit, so we're going to try to clean that language up when the bill gets over to the Senate side, just so that we have an understanding. And Mr. Thomas from the RTC brought up a good point. Why are we going to, encourage people or pay people to walk the streets if we can use drone technology or if we can use a different means of doing so? The genesis of the legislation comes from an urbanized area that is considerably different than Reno, and comes from Southern Nevada. And Ms. Thomas, lives in a district where, as most of you know who have been to Las Vegas, there wasn't a lot of urban planning put into the subdivisions and the neighborhoods that were built in Southern Nevada, and now they're trying to play catch up on something that the RTC and this organization have already been performing. So we wanted to make sure that they weren't putting a mandate on your organization or the RTC or others that was going to be more burdensome than it really needed to be.
And Mr. Chair and Mr. Clerk, I can share that amendment language. I don't know if that got passed on to you, but we can publish that on the site right after this meeting, but I can also share it right now on the screen. And basically the as proposed, the idea was for AB 343 was that the health districts of the urbanized areas, so Clark and Washoe, would conduct the full walking audits. And that really, through the amendment process that Tom was mentioning, got walked back, and the regional planning agencies were contacted along with the regional transportation commissions. And basically the scope now is for those three groups to get together and figure out by the end of next year and report back to the legislature in terms of how we would accomplish going forward doing these walking audits. And so at this time, this is the kind of thing from a GIS perspective that we're already doing. We don't see any real impact to TMRPA in creating that report, although depending on what happens maybe in 2023 and how that's enforced, that could create something for us. So there you go.
Can I ask a quick question there, Tom? What's the purpose of a walking audit? I've never even heard of the phrase walking audit before.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to you and through you to Councilman Lawson, or Mayor, apologies. The definition of a walking audit is still being decided. And that's why there really isn't a definition. It's a way for the local governments to get a better understanding of the lay of the land in some of these neighborhoods. And I think Mr. Smith did a really good job of saying, it's more than just curbs and concrete, it's walking trails. It's let's overlay and look at the dynamics of neighborhoods. If we're going to go through the effort of walking them and understanding them, let's not just look for problems, but let's look for opportunities as well. So that definition is one that we'll be working with the bill sponsor, Ms. Thomas, to clarify.
So what's the problem that they're trying to solve?
Mr. Chairman, to you and through you to Mr. Lawson, we're not quite sure, but we are participating in the process.
I don't see it. I mean, we already do all that stuff. I know we do it in the city of Sparks. We have a pavement index. We look at our curb gutter sidewalks. We do our trails. we already do all that stuff. And we're looking at new places to put in complete streets and through the RTC. I mean, sounds like they're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, at least for us. So maybe it needs to be a county over 750,000 or whatever, however they define that, to keep us out of it. This is just more undue paperwork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think we all collectively agree that if we can put a pop cap in the legislation, we will.
Thank you.
The population caps on legislation the Legislative Council Bureau has really been trying to move legislators away from doing that. It becomes a nightmare. We have the census coming up. That pop cap could change. Right now it's 700,000. And if we can amend the legislation so that it focuses on Clark County, see how they're doing it. That's one of our goals as we go into the Senate. Because you're absolutely right.
Always good to have laws that are looking for solutions or looking for a problem. Anybody else? I don't see anybody's hand up. Okay. All right. Well done, Mr. Clark. And Mr. Clark, define when you send Jeremy or Jessica a bill. No, that's okay.
Mr. Chairman, legislation? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Got it. All right. Seeing no other questions from Mr. Clark, I appreciate your hard work. Thank you for being our eyes and ears in Carson City. Couldn't do it without you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will make the same offer that I've made to the legislative subcommittee. If anybody ever has a question, please feel free to reach out and give me a call. If it's a rumor that you heard or a piece of legislation that you'd like more information on, I'm more than happy. I'm down here in Carson, even though they won't let us in the building yet. We're hoping that changes. But we are ready and willing, and we've got all of the technology and information at our fingertips, and more than happy to answer any questions or address any concerns you may have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you so much.
Real quick before we let him go, is your cell phone still the same, Tom?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear that.
You asked if your cell phone was still the same.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
It is. I'm kind of bummed that Marsha didn't stick around, because I was going to tease her about how we ran the building together 30 years ago in my first legislative sessions when she was representing the telecommunications industry. And it's nice to see a smile on her face because back then she didn't always have one.
Okay, if there are no other questions for Mr. Clark, we will close this item. Thank you again, Mr. Clark. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And there's no real action there. So item C, 6C, discussion and possible action regarding the natural resource plan request for qualifications, or RFQ. That can be found on page 17. It's actually physically 21 in our agenda book. Dr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For item 6C, as introduced, thank you for that, is going to be done as a presentation by Nate Kusha, Policy Analyst.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. For the record, Nate Kusha, Team RPA. Got a presentation to go through here. And we're going to talk about the request for qualifications for the natural resources plan that you guys directed us to create. So with that, at the February 11th governing board meeting, you guys told us to go ahead and prepare an RFQ for the natural resources plan. So we did that. And on March 25th, we brought a draft of the RFQ to the Regional Planning Commission. They reviewed it and they give us 2 recommended changes that you can see here, which are to clarify that Team RPA staff will be doing the majority of the writing for the Natural Resources Plan document itself. And second, to clarify that data relating to climate change may be a little more complex to acquire and utilize compared with some of the other more geographically specific data. So these changes are incorporated into the draft RFQ attached to your staff report. In addition to the RFQ itself, the RPC did give some general input on the overall kind of natural resources plan and the framework, including the desire to highlight climate change in that document. They gave us some recommendations on some potential resources to utilize for the creation of the document. And we also got buy-in, and some of them already volunteered to be technical advisors for some of the specific natural resource topic areas. So just a quick overview of the natural resources plan. We went through this before, but as you guys know, we're looking to build an inventory of natural resources and their locations, which will really serve as a building block to the plan itself and the attendant map. In addition to the data inventory, we will be creating narrative sections describing the needs in different natural resource topic areas. And these will be identified through our work with the consultant, the data gathering effort, as well as the reviewing of other plans. For these topic areas, we really want to focus on natural resource challenges that our region faces here. Examples are cultural resources, sustainability, resiliency, etc. And we will be forming small working groups of Team RPA staff from the local jurisdictions and affected entities. Interested stakeholders, such as those who have provided some of the data we'll get in that data gathering effort, as well as a technical advisor for each topic, which, as I mentioned, it will be a Regional Planning Commission member. So as you know, we're really looking for a consultant to help with the data gathering effort, as well as to be an overall plan design advisor. As I mentioned, Team RPA staff ourselves are really focused on writing the plan itself. So we're looking for just some guidance on the design and then really delving into that data gathering. As part of the RFQ, there are some potential tasks I have identified in there. These will be further developed throughout our scoping process. But these tasks currently include providing background information regarding the importance of natural resource preservation, assist in developing an inventory of natural resources data for the Truckee Meadows, advise and coordinate with Team RPA staff on the development of a GIS dataset to spatially represent natural resource preservation areas, aid in the identification of natural resource issues and subject areas to be further analyzed, and develop strategies for policy implementation. So these tasks are, of course, draft. These are what we have in the RFQ. Once we do bring a consultant on, we'll go ahead and review these, revise these, and really refine the tasks, which will be brought back to you guys for a final approval. So that'll be through all of that scoping process. So with that, walk through the consultant acquisition process that we put together. We have put together a selection committee, which is comprised of a couple of us at Team RPA, as well as one planner from each of the local jurisdictions. So City of Sparks, City of Reno, Marshall County. We're currently creating a scoring sheet for proposals as well as the interviews, and we are finalizing the interview process. So after we do all that, ultimately Team RPA staff will select a consultant, and then we will be coming back to you guys in June with our final scope that will really have all of those tasks that I just walked through finalized, so for you guys to approve, and you will meet our consultant at that time as well. So with that, that concludes the presentation. There is a proposed motion on this slide or in your packet, and we're available for any questions you have.
Okay, thanks, Nate. So I do have a question, and this is going to sound somewhat ignorant, but define natural resources. I mean, other than water and cultural resources, what natural resources are we going to be concentrating on?
I think that's going to be kind of figured out as part of that scoping process. I mean, we've kind of decided, I think, that cultural resources are going to be definitely one of the topic areas. We have a lot of interest in that. As well, at the RPC meeting, they gave some input. They really want to highlight climate change. We think there's going to be kind of an overall sustainability or resiliency section in it as well. As for the rest of them, we'll be working with our consultant, reviewing those other plans, really as we go through that scoping process to finalize what we're going to really focus on.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one other one that pops out instantly is wildlife, habitat, and corridors, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to gather the data in such a way that we can, do a GIS analysis at the time of our review, an independent analysis, really, to make sure we're kind of vetting, the existence of any natural resource concern for a given project.
Does this plan only include the boundaries of the regional plan, or does it go outside that, Jeremy or Nate?
Mr. Chair, great question. I think we would accept the data for a larger area, but our purview would be focused on in the county. So I mean, if, for example, mule deer habitats or something, or sage grouse habitat, was wider across Nevada, I mean, if we can get our hands on that, storage is not an issue. So we'd be happy to take a wider area, but I mean, the focus really will be for our purview area of Washoe County.
Okay, thank you. Questions from other board members? Ms. Hill, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the consultant going to be in charge of helping us with collecting data from the community on this, or is that a staff-driven process?
I think how we've scoped it is to really have the consultant, their major focus is going to be on that data gathering effort. So we imagine that's going to be from all sorts of different levels. It's going to be local, state, federal, any maybe private or nonprofit organizations in the areas, things of those nature. So of course, as we go through the process, if you guys have suggestions of where some areas we can get that data from, we're willing to take those as well and bring those to the consultant. But that will be the primary focus of the consultant, especially initially, is to gather all that data.
Great. I just want to make sure that we don't leave anyone out of the discussion, like tribal members or folks who wouldn't necessarily have access to this type of process. So happy to help if you need that.
Great.
Ms. Breckus.
Thank you. So I'm having a hard time conceptualizing it, and I just want to run a scenario. So air quality, right? We know the governing law of the nation is the Clean Air Act, right? And that's a federal law, but of course that flows down to regulating authority to the Washoe County Health Department. So, you do the data analysis and you say you have air, and it's all been documented because, through the Clean Air Act compliance, we know what's going on. How do you then integrate that into considerations of the plan and the agency's authority over land use? That's what I'm trying to connect those dots. And I can likewise take a similar guiding, kind of truism for how we operate in this region and call it Tumwa's resource plan, as the water purveyor, or I can go over here and call it RTC's RTIP. So what are you thinking if you take these different areas and put them together? How do they integrate each one and into the agency's role and authority?
I'm happy to take that one, Mr. Chair. If you want, Nate, would you like me to take that one?
Right ahead.
Great. It's a great question. And I think, one of the reasons we're doing this effort is because we want to really focus on how we can convert our understanding of data into effective policy implementation. And when we did our regional plan update, we did work on the natural resources sector, and we kind of separated out particular items like air quality may have been bundled with a bunch of other things in one big policy. And so we at least separated them out and kind of gave them that focus and attention singularly, but we realized that we didn't really have the information behind it together in a collective, comprehensive way that we could easily access it when we're doing an analysis or as we're crafting policy. And so I think the first value that's going to come from this is getting everything together in one spot so that we can ask that question, where are the air quality, where are the monitoring stations? How does it relate to the hydro basins? If we're having a project in the North Valleys, are we worried about Hydro 87 or, which monitoring stations do we look at? How do we even know how to move forward? Right now, those pieces exist, but they're scattered. And so, the idea I think initially is really to bring it together so we have it at our fingertips and then use that information collectively with you and the RPC and others in the community as we engage to come up with what that means in terms of how we would want to change a policy in the regional plan in our update in 2024 or sooner possibly. And then what are those implications for the master plans in that process? So that's kind of, I think, how we're trying to get there.
So I would restate, this isn't plan implementation. This is plan information gathering to inform a subsequent update is how I'm really interpreting this at this time. And of course, we're on a 5-year cycle, but
yes,
it just kind of clicked to me because I didn't support the regional plan. I thought there were too many hanging chads. And there were the two, this one and the other one that were left over. And really, if I can interpret it that this is the tee off to the next one. This is what it sounds like a lot more to me than implementation is how it was when we closed out the adoption last time. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just how I'm now interpreting it. So thank you.
I think that's correct. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Lawson?
Yeah, so it's been my philosophy or understanding throughout this whole time is regional planning is where the information is kept. This is just one more piece of information where you come to for that answer. We know where sewer lines are. We know where water lines are. We know where deer migration and hamsters live. All that's good stuff. It's all good information, that one place to come get it. I like it.
Okay, important to have a hamster permit. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. So staff is asking us for approval of this. That motion, the potential motion, can be found on page 22 physically of the agenda book. There it is. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I don't think we have any, but we might just check and make sure we don't have any public comment.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
No,
Do we have any, Damien?
we have not received any for this item.
Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? If so, raise your hand. All right. Thank you so much. So seeing none, I will entertain a motion either for or against.
I'll move to direct staff to issue their RFQ for the natural resources plan, consultant acquisition as identified in the staff report.
Do you have a motion? Do I have a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion by Ms. Weber, second by Ms. Vanderwell. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item 6D, introduction of possible changes to amend the Rpgb regulations on procedure to reflect policy changes in the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. This is, as I see it, Dr. Smith, some housekeeping.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take us through this one with a short presentation just to let you know what's been happening and then give you some options to move forward. Okay. Are you guys seeing the presentation pretty well now? Is it good?
We are.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this is item 6D. We're talking about potential changes. Really what we're trying to do is bring the regulations into line and consistency with the now existing 2019 regional plan. I will say that as we go through this, we have not really contemplated anything that I would refer to as a substantive change. It's really like, as the chair mentioned, or it's housekeeping. So a little bit of history. The current version of the regulations procedure was adopted first in 2002. There was a version prior to that, I imagine, but I didn't have that handy. But we've gone back and you can see on the right there all the different times it's been amended. Most recently was a while back in 2014 when I think I brought forward some changes with regard to the consensus forecast. And so that was the last time we updated it. But you can see there's been quite a few updates. One that's kind of interesting that applies to what we're doing today was in 2007. There was an RPC-led process, I believe, or they were involved at the very least, to help craft some regulations around a private property owner request to make a regional planning amendment sponsorship request to the RPC. So we'll see that in a sec here. When in the document, how it's set up is that we have text that would be removed with a red strike through, and text that is being added is a blue underline. So you can see what's coming out, what's going in. And then in terms of version control, we have the list of when things have been amended and then therefore adopted. What we were planning to do on this is to make sure that folks have access to the most recent version right on the website, right next to the newly adopted version, if it's adopted, and so that they can see exactly how these changes go down. There may be a case per discussions with legal counsel where, the old version of the regulations could apply potentially if somebody was seen as coming under the authority, say, of the previous regional plan, which I think would be rare at this point, but possible. So we're going to keep that handy and make sure those are available. Here are the changes, really kind of minimal. So we noticed that there was a reference to Appendix 8, and that was referencing our land use translation table, master plan at one jurisdiction to another. We still have that table. There's just no longer an Appendix 8. So we updated that to read in the most recently adopted plan. We found one typo only, which is pretty awesome. And that was a B that should be a by. So we changed that. There was a reference to the PRS resolution of the RPC. It was a bit of an outdated reference, referencing a version of that that's now been amended. So we changed that to the currently adopted RPC resolution as well, which is available in the regional plan. We changed the cover. So that's been since 2014, right? We have this new cover set. You saw it in Nate's RFQ presentation. We've designed a cover that matches the regional plan cover, and we're going for a consistency in approach. And then finally, which is sort of the biggest change, but again, not really substantive, is that we have removed any reference to the concept of future service areas and replaced it with a reference to regional land designations. And so what is that? So there was a substantive change during the plan update. If you look to the left there, that's the old plan, that's map 5, and it indicated a couple of interesting areas. We had the TMSA on there, so the TMSA is not a new concept, but there used to be a concept called future service areas, or FSAs, and you can see that in this kind of brown color out to the east of Sparks. The yellow, I believe, is Washoe County's future service area, rather, and then the green was Reno's future service area. Those areas were developed during the big boom of the 90s to the 2000s, and I don't think it was a bad concept per se, but it was a concept that we basically did away with as we did the update to 2019. And realistically, it got replaced by this new concept of regional land designations, which is the formal name for what we often refer to as the tiers. And there are now 5 regional land designations: the mixed use core, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, in the rural area. And we have provided for a process through which a jurisdiction or, a master planning change might initiate this, where you can amend those boundaries. And so there's still a path. We just no longer have the concept of the future service area in our plan. And so all that big red line and blue underline thing does is take out the section 2B that has references to future service area, and in all cases, replaces it with regional land designations. So that's the housekeeping aspect of this. However, it was intimated by certain board members that possibly it would be worth considering substantive changes to that regulation or possibly other regulations, but specifically brought up around section 2B, the private property owner requests. So this is where a private property owner can petition the RPC to sponsor a regional plan amendment. Let's say they own a property that's in the TMSA and they want to be out of the TMSA. So they could go and ask the RPC if they want to sponsor it. If that happens, if the RPC votes to sponsor, then there's a 90-day review period. It comes back to the RPC for the actual regional plan amendment process, where if there's a resolution to recommend, it would come back to this body for a final adoption. I will say that this may have been more frequent, maybe back in 2007 when this was contemplated and added in, but it's been highly infrequent, really, since I've been at regional planning since 2011. I'm only aware of one instance that this was sought. In fact, it was withdrawn. But it was in that case, and my understanding is it is often sought, this sort of change once no joy has been received from the local jurisdiction, right? So if a person's going in to do a master plan land use change, we typically always ask them to work with the local jurisdiction first and foremost to make sure that's the direction that the jurisdiction wants to go. Sometimes it's not. And then that private property owner needs to have due process in a way to adjust those boundaries on their property, or at least ask to have them adjusted rather, because we maintain them. We maintain the TMSA, we maintain the tiers and the sphere. And so this is the place that those get changed. So it came up that potentially we might want to examine some version of changing that, possibly to adjust the voting requirements to include the jurisdiction, possibly to add a caveat that private property owners must first go seek this at the local jurisdiction. Those are not requirements of what we're asking you to do today, but they could be for further discussion. And so here's a few paths forward that I tried to come up with for today. So number one, we could adopt these housekeeping changes as proposed today and call it good right there. We could adopt the changes as proposed today, and then you guys could direct us to go on and do some more research and potentially bring back more changes in the future to a subsequent meeting for approval. You may want to involve the RPC in scoping those changes. And third, possibly you could feel we're not ready to make this change today, and you could say, hold off, we want you to do more research, and then we would bring back these changes and others at a subsequent meeting. And so those are kind of the options to move forward. And with that, you do have a motion here on the screen or in your packet. I'm going to stop sharing and be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Ms. Breckus, go ahead.
Yeah, my colleague, Miss Stewart, who's not here today, reached out to me and she had the same thoughts that I had. That private property recourse to this body, I always thought was a flaw to put in, and I'll tell you why. And I think, Dr. Smith, you made a mistake in your language too, saying they had due process. This is not a due process body. Due process is where you have rights, and the rights that we look at here are property rights. And those property rights are through the development process that goes through down, below, exercising your rights of zoning, exercising your rights under the building code. Here we're operating much more legislatively. And I think consistent with that high level is that the jurisdictions themselves, through their planning powers, bring it up to this body. I think if you went back, and maybe legal counsel knows the history, it was a time when some powerful people wanted to be able to grease things through this body when they weren't getting traction at other levels. And I think it sought to make this more of a development body than a high-level regional planning body where we should be. And so I've always had issue with that. And I guess Ms. Stewart and I've never talked about it, but she also sees that. I think people who want to move the lines here need to have one of the bodies come forward and advocate it for it. That's how we're entirely set up. So that was a process problem to me. Another issue that I brought up with your predecessor when I first came on is projects that go through regional project of regional conformance. Then when they get a little change up, you know, and I think Evans Ranch was the big one. It was a PUD that was approved in the 2005s under the Cold Springs annexation. Has never had a tentative map to it, but they came through the city of Reno for a big change up. And I said, that thing's got to go to regional planning because it went through regional conformance again. And now it's a different product. It needs to come forward. And she said, yes, I know we need to change the issues of projects of regional significance so that when there's amendments to those, they can't completely be have reliance upon their old approval because the regional impacts of this old approval are different. So we still haven't touched that, have we? And I think that needs to happen. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it really happens to very impacting projects.
Okay. Others? Mr. Lawson?
I'm okay with the changes that you discussed in the beginning. As far as the wholesale changes, Jeremy, I don't think we need to worry about that. It's, once again, I think we're trying to create a solution for a problem that doesn't exist.
Okay, and I have a tendency to agree. I think these are just some housekeeping changes. I would like PRS brought back at some point. I know Mr. Lawson, you and I and others started on it, to reevaluate what a project of regional significance should look like and what kind of triggers might be in place. So, I mean, I look forward to still having that conversation. I know that kind of stalled, but I agree. This is just, I'm not looking to monkey around with other stuff myself. Okay, anybody else? Ms. Weber?
Thank you. Sorry, I can't find my hands button, raising my hand. I agree with Mayor Lawson as well. And I do believe that that what we have going forward is what's been recommended without any of those changes, that we should just do that. So that's my thoughts.
Okay. Hold on, Ms. Hill. Hold on, Ms. Burke.
Wondering if we could look at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if we can look at that second option of having staff do a little bit of research and bring it back to us. Just as a new board member, I think that the Council Member Breckus brings up some valid points, and I'd just like to learn a little bit more. So that would be helpful for me to understand the issue a bit more.
Okay, Ms. Breckus.
Yeah, I would support that option too, because when I hear it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, no, it's a solution to a problem that was raised some time ago, possibly so long ago that everyone's forgotten about it. But often there are, we have these agencies like ours have big tasks, always underfunded, always under-resourced. And so things kind of go in the parking lot for a long time. But to say it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist is not accurate often, because I'll just use it and we just redid our zoning code and we probably left 40-50 things that are very material hanging. And so they only pop up every now and then, but when they do, we don't want to lose track of them. And I think that if we went off on option 2, we will find very concrete examples of these two problems that will say, yeah, that doesn't sound about right. So if we go with option 2, let's look at, could have been 5-7 years ago and board members change and people forget, but there's things that have not been gotten to often with these agencies.
Okay, well, what I'm going to suggest though is that we split this into 2 motions. Actually, because we have some typographical errors and some basic errors that need to be corrected now. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to just, turn the B into buy or the buy into B, and and the lack of an appendix 8. I mean, those are very sort of just quotidian things that are day to day. We found typographical errors, and those need to be dealt with. So I think that in itself is potentially a motion, and I'm going to ask legal to chime in here. Are we styled to do it this way? And then if some of the members want more information from staff regarding some of the other things, I think that can be styled in an additional motion. That's my suggestion. But I'm open to some feedback from the board. Ms. Prenti?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jessica Prenti for the record. I think your approach is sound to break it into two motions. The first motion would be to accept the changes as presented by Director Smith in the red lines. And then a second motion could be for direction to staff to research various areas and bring some recommendations back to this board based upon the comments from the board members today.
Okay, Mr. Lawson.
Make a motion on the first part. I move to approve the proposed amendments to the Rpgb regulations on procedures as outlined by staff.
Mr. Chair, I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Lawson, second by Ms. Vanderwell. Before we move forward, do we have any public comment on this item, Damian?
We have not received any for this item.
Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? So please raise your hand or give me the high sign. Okay, seeing none. All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Lawson, second by Mr. Vanderwell. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, so that's our housekeeping portion of this. I will entertain the second motion portion of this agenda item. Ms. Breckus.
Yeah, I'd move that staff be directed to bring back to us options in the history on the private sponsorship for regional plan amendments for reconsideration and possible action. And then also an examination into regional plan projects of regional significance and modifications to those options for looking at those on a subsequent conformance review if they have not yet been enacted or otherwise in a phase of development. Do you understand, Dr. Smith?
Yeah, that's my question.
Yes, I do. I believe I do.
Yeah, I've had conversation with them for a long time on this. I can under comment, I can provide a very concrete example to everyone that maybe will help kind of explain what's going on too. There's a second.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Ms. Hill, by Ms. Breckus, second by Ms. Hill is who I heard first. Okay, under discussion, Ms. Breckus.
Yeah, I want to talk about something called Evans Ranch, which is in the commission district that Ms. Herman represents, but Ms. Weber represented it when it came through, and it was approved in the 2006-2007s. And then I came on in 2012, 2013 or so. It came and it went through regional conformance review. Okay, so it was a entitled plan unit development. In 2014 or 2015, it came to the city of Reno on a master plan amendment and a zone change, because that's how we look at these PUDs, and nothing had happened on this development. And it was going for a second access route. And a second access route was dedicated through a county unincorporated neighborhood and shown through as a routing to this from a Reno fire station up into this development. I think it's called the Horizon or Haven, Rancho Haven neighborhood. Okay, so that was a project that had gone through regional significance, was changed considerably to impacting an unincorporated community, and just was all done at the Reno City Council, never came up to regional, where Ms. Weber, who was the ward for the district commissioner up there never got a chance to take the regional eye look at it and understand the impact to her unincorporated residents. And it really was going to change the road characteristics serving a neighborhood. And I had a lot of talk with Miss Robinson at the time, and she did strongly agree that there were situations where some of these, when they've gone through conformance review, if they're changing that materially, needed to come up for regional. So I'm a Reno person here who has tried to push for more regional cooperation in instances like that. And this is the venue to do it. And that's what this motion, kind of helps us examine that in better detail. Mr. Hartung, we can't hear you.
I apologize. Thank you. I muted myself when I thought I unmuted myself. It's been a long day. I was up at 4 o'clock this morning, so please forgive me. If I look tired, it's because I am. Okay. Is there any other discussion on this motion? And is there any, oh, Mr. Lawson, go ahead.
What we're talking about is bringing back information. All right, I'm okay with that. I just caution us, and I do the same thing with the Spark City Council, is let's don't use up a ton of staff time on something that may or may not be taken up, at some time in the future, because there's a very small staff and a lot of stuff to do for them. So
yes,
I can get behind the information on this particular item, because I think you're right, Jenny. It has been a long time since we've dealt with this. And in my 10 years that we haven't dealt with it. So if we need to look at it again, I'm all in favor of that.
okay. Under discussion, Dr. Smith, how do you feel about the use of staff time? I'm phrasing it incorrectly. Do you feel like this will be an overburdenous request in any way?
No, I do not. No. And this is what we sort of anticipated, that, we wanted to introduce the idea today and find out the will of the board. And we figured we'd need to go off and do some research and bring an item back. So we were basically prepared to do that. And per previous comments at previous meetings, really, we were prepared to bring back that PRS discussion as well. So both are part of what we're planning to do.
Okay, that's swell. Okay, all right. Any other discussion? And we have no public comment. All right, seeing none, we have a motion by Ms. Breckus, a second by Ms. Hill. Is there, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Hartung?
Yes, yeah, Ms. Breckus, I'm sorry.
Point of order. I always have to go over to the Historic Resources Commission on these days, and they have a fair amount. Do you have 7? How many people do you have here? 1, 2, 3?
We still have quorum.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Yep. We still have somebody from Reno. Okay. All right. 6E, consideration of possible adoption of an update course training for Regional Planning Commission members. According to this, it's on page 79, but I have it on page 83 of our agenda book. Dr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And just a quick clarification on those numbers. If you're looking at a digital version of the PDF, the page numbers include the unnumbered agenda pages, and that's why it gets a little off. So if you look down to the red, that's it's about 4 pages off usually.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the physical agenda on my PDF reader.
Right.
Which is where, and I know it
pages.
includes a bunch of extra stuffs, but I want to make sure that everybody knows where we are, just in the event that they are looking.
Excellent.
So,
thank you very much.
Forgive my pedantic nature.
No, it's good to clarify. Thank you. So for this final business of the day, item 6E, we have Nate Kusha to give a short presentation.
Good afternoon again, board members. Nate Kusha, Team RPA. So we're going to go over the Regional Planning Commission training course. NRS 278.0265 does require that the Regional Planning Governing Board prescribe an appropriate course of at least 12 hours of training in land use planning for the members of the Regional Planning Commission. And that must include the things you see here, the state statutes and regulations and local ordinances, resolutions, and regulations concerning land use planning, as well as the provisions of Chapter 241 of NRS, which is the meetings of local and state and local agencies. So with the training course, the current training program was approved on April 9th of 2015. We're really looking to make the RPC training easier and easier to track and complete. So with that, we have created the RPC training portal, which is a website that provides links to all required as well as elective training materials. We've also implemented a training series where a brief presentation is given by Team RPA staff during RPC meetings to help orient members of the RPC to specific training materials, which we direct them to for further independent study and review. In addition, we have created a self-certification form where the RPC members track their hours and self-certify that they have completed the training. So currently we have it set up, so about 6 hours of a training come from required materials. That includes the things I mentioned of NRS, as well as local ordinances and resolutions relating to land use planning. And we then leaves roughly 6 hours for elective materials, and that's things like books, movies, and presentations, or attending land use planning related conferences, such as the American Planning Association conferences. As we have mentioned, we are proposing a minor update to the training program to allow staff to assess and approve the applicability of commissioner requested materials. So with that, I'm going to walk through kind of the criteria for these. So how we're setting it up is, they're hoping to set it up anyways, is that different commission members can request elective materials to add into the training course, that then any of the other commissioners can utilize that towards hours for their training. And so they can request things like books or movies, videos, presentations, any other media. One of the criteria for this is that it must have a primary purpose of disseminating information about land use and or regional planning. The emphasis should really be towards materials that address challenges or characteristics similar to those that we have here in the Truckee Meadows. Things such as like a semi-arid climate, rapid population growth, or a tourist economy. Some examples. Team RPA staff, we must validate the credibility of the requested materials source. So things like, does it come from a university or planning agency? We'll be looking for that sort of level. And then each new material added in this way can only account for a maximum of 1.5 hours for the 12-hour training requirement. So even if a video maybe is 2 or 3 hours long, we can only count any individual one of those for 1.5. Once we've approved any of these materials, we will add it to the material list on the training portal that you saw, and then any of the other commissioners can opt to watch or read or whatever it is for their training as well. So with that, that's all the criteria. I'm going to leave it there for a minute so you guys can kind of look over it. But that's what we're looking for, is really just the flexibility to add in requested materials from commissioners. And these are the criteria we'll be looking for to approve that. And us at Team RPA staff will approve and add to the list if it meets all these criteria.
Okay.
So with that, I'll take any questions you guys have about that.
All right. I'm going to start with just a comment. I come from an era of a robust training courses through the Citizens Advisory Board, our Planning Commission, Washoe County's Planning Commission. I mean, it was very robust back in the day when we had money, and they had a department that was that oversaw cabs. Our trainer was Bob Webb under Leslie Roylance, and John Slaughter was the head of that section. So, I mean, for me personally, I think that this is a great aspect. Training is, we expect Planning Commission and regional planning commissioners to make some pretty heavy duty decisions. And I think it's incumbent upon us to provide training to them so that they can understand, just, what we're really dealing with, and they're making decisions based on good solid data and not emotion. Because I think that's many times what happens is you get caught up in the emotion of the issue and not the data of the issue. So I'm personally behind this. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Vanderwall.
I'd like to echo everything that you said, and I think it's important, and thank you for bringing this forward. And I do have a question. Are we able to participate in these also, just to keep our education up to date?
Yes, but you have to pay.
Okay. I want to make sure that it's open to everyone.
Yes, Jeremy or Nate.
Absolutely, yeah. We have the training portal link that was on this presentation. We'll make sure that goes out to all of you guys as well. And you can go there and you can find all the materials that we have up there and go through them as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think that's a great question, Diane. I mean, we can all use refreshers periodically. Sometimes you get wrapped up in what you're doing and you forget how important it is to just take a little refresher and go back to kind of the roots. Any other questions for staff? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Thigpen.
I don't think you can see my hand. It might be blending into
No,
the white
I
background.
can see it now. Thank you. I apologize. I wasn't trying to step over you, sir.
No worries. I'm just curious, Nate, and obviously this is great. I think continuing education is necessary in any industry. It's great that you're looking at updating this since it hasn't been updated since 2015, and how time flies, right? If you were to get the approval on this, how quickly will you all be implementing this updated training?
Immediately. We've already started on some of these aspects, things like doing the presentations at RPC meetings. We've been doing that for our last few meetings. So that's kind of already happening, and we have already been directing them towards the required materials. That's not changing. So what we're looking for is the flexibility on the elective stuff. Some of the elective materials that we have in the training program currently are a little outdated. And so we're looking for the flexibility. That's bound to happen, right, as years go on. So what we're looking for is for us to have the flexibility so that it doesn't happen, so that we keep things more current and more updated. So we will be doing it immediately, though.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Again, Ms. Weber.
Thank you. I just wanted to check in and see, I think it was already asked, but I think that anyone on this committee, the Regional Planning Governing Board, should be invited to attend or be a part of that. I think it was really helpful. I don't think I've ever attended anything like that because I didn't serve on the Planning Commission. And so I think it would be very helpful and as a reminder of what we're going through. So I just like to suggest that if there is, that we be invited, if we could. Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may make it really quick.
Yeah, and then Ms. Vanderwall, the floor will be yours after Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just would say that, in our attempt to implement the existing training program, we've created those, we were calling them, I don't know, the RPC minute or training segment or something silly, but we could opt to also bring those short presentations, they're very quick, to this body, at future meetings. And that way you would be clued into what we're telling them and how we're orienting them. And then of course you do have access to the site to go and delve deeper. But we could add that little element and bring that training aspect to this board as well.
Ms. Vanderwall.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm just prepared to make a motion if there's no more questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. And by the way, Dr. Smith, I think that's a phenomenal idea. Those little snippets, it's, again, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so I'm fully in agreement here. Ms. Vanderwall, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I move to approve the RPC training program as outlined by staff.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Vanderwall, second by Ms. Weber. Before we go into a vote, do we have any public comment on this item, Mr. Kerwin?
There's no public comment for this item.
Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak in the chat room at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. We have a motion by Ms. Vanderwell, second by Ms. Weber. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Thank you, staff. We appreciate
Thank you.
that. Well done. All right, we are on to item 7, reports. Washoe County School District Board of Trustees member report. Mr. Thigpen, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to look at my notes here. We had a press release that went out today regarding the updates to road construction associated to Hug High School on Sullivan Lane. And it looks like things are going well. The school district is working hard at mitigating 100% max impacts in advance of the school opening as a requirement of the extensive public input and required permits from Washoe County, City of Sparks, and Nevada Department of Transportation. We're very grateful to the staff at Sparks, Washoe County, and Nevada Department of Transportation who has collaborated with us on this and developed and approved the plan for us to mitigate those impacts of the high school before one student sets foot on campus. In between our last meeting, I was actually able to go to the construction site and get a view of things. It's looking good. Construction's progressing pretty well, and we're expected to bring these sidewalks and off-site safety improvements to that community and open the school still on time in August 2022. When the road work is complete, Sullivan Lane will feature 2 roundabouts and sidewalks that will more safely accommodate pedestrians and vehicle traffic in preparation for the school opening. And lastly, the Wild Creek Golf Course will remain open and accessible throughout construction, and we're truly looking forward to the rebirth of Wild Creek and the area with the school opening. And at our next meeting that we have in this committee, I will have met or received an update to our 5-year capital improvement plan. That is going to be at our April 27th school board meeting, and how that's going to align with the TMRPA regional plan. So when we come back, I'll have some updates on that too.
Okay, by the way, I love the Sparks green that the school is right now. Dare I say the Irish green. I've had people ask me, is that the permanent color?
That's a good question. I actually don't know. I when I went to the school site, I'm thinking, well, that must be like the temporary siding or something like that. That's a good question. I'll have to ask.
I think it's temporary also, but it gets my attention every time I drive through there. Any questions for Mr. Thigpen, for Trustee Thigpen? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate that. We will move on to reports 7B, members and directors reports. Dr. Smith, do you have any such items?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few update items. The first is that our next meeting is scheduled for June 10th. We're going to do our best to get that to be an in-person meeting. So hopefully this will be our last Zoom meeting if all goes well. I would like to send you guys after this a link to a community conversation I participated in as part of a little panel for Truckee Meadows tomorrow, talking about growth in the region. It seems to be getting some good traction, and you might be interested in checking that out. There's a little bit of update on the COVID risk meter front. We're pretty close to being able to hand that risk meter work over to the health district. They're excited to take that, as well as the governor has come up with this plan to relinquish control of the openings and closings to local authority. The risk meter has been selected, is my understanding, as one aspect of that plan for Washoe County to take over that control. So we're happy and we're assisting with that whenever possible. And finally, just an update. We had a previous request to kind of do an update on our work with housing from Commissioner Hill. And just wanted to let you know that we are planning to bring in June the home consortium item, and as well as a progress update on our work on tracking affordable housing in the region. Thank you.
Okay. Any members have anything for staff at this time? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So we will close. I think we've given you guys plenty of direction in other items on future agenda items. We will go to item 7C, Legal Counsel's report. That's either Mr. Azevedo or Ms. Prunty or both.
Mr. Chairman, this is Norm Azevedo. I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Board comments and requests for future agenda items. Item 8. Oh, I love it. We'll close item 8. We'll go to item 9. Public comment. Mr. Kerwin, do we have anyone wishing to speak at this time?
We do not.
Is there anyone in the chat room wishing to speak? If so, please raise your hand. Let us know. Possible. Okay, I don't see anyone. I'm going to close public comment then. Written correspondence, Dr. Smith.
We have none.
That takes us to item 11. Thank you so much. We are adjourned. Okay.
Well, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.